Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Wisnu Purbo, and in this presentation, I will talk to you guys about animal communication and also human language. And this presentation is for my final project in Introduction to Linguistic course. And here are the table of contents or subtopics that I'm going to discuss in this presentation. The first one is that nature of communication. The second one is animal communication. The third one is human communication. And then the last one is about human language and animal communication. So before that, I'm going to introduce to you guys about language and communication terms. So basically, language and communication are interchangeable terms. You may use language and also communication, but there are a few differences. Communication cover wider definition of language, which means that we may use terms of communication for animal and also for human. Meanwhile, language is exclusively used only for human or only by human. And then these both terms, language and communication, cannot be separated. Why? Because of course communication will be hard to help if there are no language, and then language will be useless if there are no communication. Moving on to the first subtopics, and it is about nature of communication. Definition of communication. Definition of communication is took from words communicate, which means to make something known. So we can make a complex definition from that, which means that communication, the act of telling something to others in order that they know the speaker's idea. So from this definition, we can take three main elements, and it is speakers, and then receivers, and then the last one is message. And here is the process of communication by Crane. Crane said that communication is a process of conveying message from a source or a sender to a goal or a receiver. So from this definition of communication by Crane, we can take three main elements of communication too. And it is one, a source or a sender, and then two, a goal or a receiver, and then the last one is a message. And then here is the process of communication. The first one is that encoding the information into a symbolic systems, or to make it easier for you guys to understand is that we choose what language we want to use. And then the second one is that selecting mode of communication. We got three mode of communication, and it is writing, speech, and also gesture. And then the third one is delivering the symbols to a medium. For example, if you are using writing, the symbol is that an ink. If you are using speech, the medium is an air. And then if you are using gesture, the medium is a light. And then the fourth one is processing the symbol by the receiver. Make sure that the receiver can see or can hear our message. And then the last one is that decoding the symbols by the receivers and giving feedback, where the receiver is trying to understand our message and then giving the feedback of our message. And then here is the elements of communication or a process of communication by coach. The first one is that source wishes to communicate an idea, and then the second one is that source encodes the idea in message. So from these two statements, I need to remind you guys that idea is different from message. So for example, you know that your stomach is hurt. You know that you are hungry. That's an idea, okay? You want to tell or you want to express that you are hungry to your friend. That's an idea. And then you tell to your friend, hey, I'm hungry. I need to take some food. That's a message. So that's why idea is not a message yet. And then the third one is that the message sent through a media or channel. And then the fourth one is that the receiver receives and decodes the message by hearing or seeing our message. And then the last one is that the receiver responds to our message. So the difference between process of communication by coach and Crane is that coach using a simpler language to explain to us about a process of communication. And then the second one, we're talking about animal communication. There are four ways of animals to communicate. The first one is that visual. For example, when dog is wiggling their tail, and we can see they are wiggling their tail, which means that they are excited, they already use ways of communicate visual. And then we're talking about auditory. When a cat is meowing in front of their plate, we can hear their meows in front of a plate, which means that they want a food, right? They already use the ways of communicate auditory. And then tactile is, for example, when a bee is approaching a scout bee and feeling its movements with their own antenna to find a food, they already use ways of communicate tactile. And then the last one is chemicals, or for example, when ant is leaving the chemical trails for their nestmates or other ants to follow when they are trying to finding food. And then Steinberg said that the function of communication from animal is to get food, to find a mate, to warn and threaten others. Well, even though I already give you guys an example only to get food, when animals try to get food, there are many functions of communication from animal, and it is to find a mate or to warn and also threaten others. And then the third one is that human communication. There are three ways for humans to communicate. The first one is that speech, the second one is writing, and then the last one is gesture. The first one, speech. Speech is the common system of communication used by humans. Well, of course, because since we were a child, our parents taught us first about a speech. There's no possible way, right, that our parents taught us about our writing. And then that's why speech is the common system of communication used by humans, because since we were a child, we already use speech. And then speech is the commonly used communicative system in our daily lives. And then the second one is that speech requires the involvement of human organs of speech, for example, for respiratory organ or a tongue, teeth, larynx, and many more. And then third, speech contains three components. The first one is that phonological, or the sound, and then synthetic. For the easiest way to explain synthetic is about grammar, and then the last one is semantic, or about meaning. And then the second one is writing. Writing is as important as speech, even though it is less popular. And why it is less popular? Because writing is a bit complicated if we want to use that in our daily lives. For example, when we are trying to talk face to face, there's no way we prefer writing rather than speech, right? It is complicated. We need to put our paper out, we need to put our pen or our pencil, and then that's why we prefer speech. And then that's why speech is more popular than writing. But even though writing is less popular than speech, writing is as important as speech. Why? Because if we keep our writing in a good condition, we can read it again and again. And it is important when we're talking about history, we use writing. And then there are three basic types of writing. The first one is that logographic. It is a writing system in which each symbols represent a word. It is usually in Chinese, for example. And then syllabic, a writing system where each symbol represents a syllable, for example, in Japanese. And then the last one is alphabetic, for example, in Indonesian or in English. And then the last one is about gesture. Gesture is the first form of communication, and then gesture is including all of the body language, and then gesture is a physical manipulation that neither verbal nor graphic, but is communicative. So we cannot say that gesture is a verbal communicative system or a graphic communicative system. Gesture is a gesture. Gesture is basically used by disabled people to communicate. And then the last one is about human language and animal communication. And I'm going to ask you, do all of these activities represent the use of language? The first one is that a picture when cat meows in front of a plate. And then the second one is when dog barks when see a stranger. And then a children who said, I want milk. And then the answer is no. The answer is only the children who said, I want milk is representing the use of language. But I need to remind you guys, even though the only picture that represents the use of language is the third picture, doesn't mean that cat meows or dog barks is not communicating. They are communicate. It is a communicative system, but it is not representing the use of language. So we are asking, what is differentiating between human language and other communicative acts? The answer is design feature of language, and there are 6 of them. The first one is duality of patterning, where human can create many words from vowel. We as a human, we can combine vowels and consonant, and we can make many words from that, right? And animals cannot do that. And then displacement, it is beyond time and place. We can talk about past experience. We can talk about our future plan as a human, but animals cannot do that. They only communicate what is happening at the moment. And then open-endedness, a capability to tell something that never happened. For example, when human is lying, animals cannot lie, and that is open-endedness. And then stimulus freedom, free to use language with various contexts. We as a human, we can talk about many contexts, and then animal doesn't have many contexts, and that's stimulus freedom. And then arbitrariness, no need specific reason to name something. For example, in Indonesian, we say chair as a kursi. What does kursi mean? That's we don't need a specific reason when we name something, and that is arbitrariness in a design feature of language. And then the last one is about the human focal tract. Human have a complete focal tract, and animal doesn't have a complete focal tract. There's already a big differentiation between that. And this is design feature of language, which differentiate human language and other communicative acts. And then I think that's all the explanation from me about human language and animal communication. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys got something from my explanation. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.